Hello, and thank you for joining me today on Live with a Purpose. Little steps that either lead to misery or happiness. They're little steps because sometimes, many times, things don't go in one way or the other so quickly. It's always about the little steps, the steps we take. Are we taking them in the right direction? We're on the path to God, and yet we start sort of shimmying over to the other side, being nosy, taking a pause. Maybe we stop somewhere and we looking at our phone like we have something important to do, but we're being nosy and looking at something and wanting to hear something that has nothing to do with us, or allowing somebody to tempt us or to fall into temptation. Little steps. That's the way things begin. We may be calling out to God like the Jews did, like the Israelites did in Egypt. They called to God for 400 years. They were in servitude and bondage. They were oppressed, and God does send them a deliverer, Moses, to bring them out. And you would think that they would be grateful, but they weren't. Sounds weird. They were not. Most of them were not. They began grumbling right away. They began getting chatty. They were on the path out through the wilderness, through the Red Sea and onto the other side, and yet they were still talking the whole time. We want happiness. And maybe you've thought this yourself and said this yourself, don't I deserve to be happy? The answer to that, in short, is no. None of us deserve anything. It is only by God's grace, by his favor, by his goodness, that we even exist at all. And yet, instead of inquiring further and say, who are you, God? What is it that you want for me? You don't want me to be in misery. You do want me to be happy and joyous. But in you, happiness, true happiness, is found in God. All the other happiness that we tend to find out there is short-lived, is of our own making. When we do things outside of God's decrees, out of his commands, out of what he wants for us. He knows. And he knows where it's going to lead. But sometimes, supposedly, we can't help ourselves. In 1 Corinthians 10, 1-5 from the NIV, it says, "For I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud and that they all passed through the sea. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food, and drank the same spiritual drink, for they all drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. Nevertheless, God was not pleased with most of them. Their bodies were scattered in the wilderness." God let them die. They wanted to do their thing. He said, okay, I'll wait you out. He walked them around the wilderness for 40 years. Some were punished. They were killed or were destroyed. But most of them, he said, okay, I'll let you guys do whatever you're going to do. I'll wait until I can deal with the next generation. They were right in God's presence. The fire enveloped within the cloud that followed them day and night. They had no excuse. But, they had their ears tickled. So the itchy ears, they hear the music. They see the men, the women, they say, hey, why can't we have some of that? Things that just are temporary. Things that just sort of satisfy for now and fill a hole, fill a vacuum. But there's a bigger problem. That hole is still there. That's the problem. We're trying to sidestep God, but he's the one that truly fills the void. From verse 11-13, it says, "These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the culmination of the ages has come. So if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it." So whatever's going on today, God gives you strength. He is the one that is faithful. He is the one that's going to help you if you call out to him. If you say, God, you are worth it. Lord, I want to please you. I don't want to continue to please my own urges, my own sin, my own draw to whatever it is or to whomever it is. I want to have clean hands before you. Sure, the draw is strong because of our bodies and our sinful behaviors, right? We're in a fallen state. And so it's like a strong earth magnet that pulls us towards somebody or towards something away from God. This is why we need to stay on the road. We need to stay on the road, taking small steps, little steps, but sure, grounded steps in the Lord, and not just leave it all for another day. We have to be watching and praying and asking the Lord to illumine, to light up our path that we may see. And we may find that we're not on his path at all. We're way off. We're somewhere else. We don't even know where we are. But God is faithful. Who's faithful? God is faithful, and who will not allow us to be tempted beyond what we can bear. So when we think that we can't handle it, we could handle it. We're supposed to call on him. So I invite you to think on these things today. Thank you for joining me today on Live with a Purpose.